welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of Gamecock.
This is Rogers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rogers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod live on the last day of April. Can you believe it? The calendar will flip to May at midnight, and we have got a great show in store for you, episode number 1738. We just keep plugging away. Let me tell you about my good friend, Chris Payne from Nana's Porch. But first, let me tell you, we will be joined in just a couple minutes by our good friend from the Greenville News. That is Lulu Kesin. She was at the spring game. We're going to get her thoughts, impressions, talk about the team, and then we'll move into, of course, today at 4 p.m., Dawn Staley's statue will be unveiled in downtown Columbia, right by the USC Alumni Center. But let me tell you about my good friend Chris Payne at Nana's Porch in Charlotte. They're your go-to for all your catering needs. Doesn't matter what it is, if it's a wedding anniversary, a birthday party, a graduation party, a corporate event, a banquet, wedding, they've got you covered. They are the go-to in that part of the country. If you were at the Carolina Rise tailgate a couple years ago in Charlotte, you know how good the food is, and you know how hard he works. Morning, Craig. Always good to have you with us. So go to nanasporch.com. That's nanasporch.com. Get in touch with Chris. They're your go-to for all your catering needs. Even if you're having a smaller party or get-together, maybe they can just drop some food off for you. And while you're there, order plenty of Nana's Porch award-winning pimento cheese. Let me tell you, the most difficult part of the process is deciding how much of each flavor you're going to order. Am I going to order 3 tubs of smoky jalapeno and 2 of the regular flavor? Am I going to do 2 of each? What am I going to do? Because making your selection after you do that checkout is simple, safe, and secure, and shipping is absolutely free of charge. So before Lulu joins us, we got some bad news last night from Paul Maneri after the Gamecocks defeated Charleston Southern 5-3. Ethan Petrie has got an AC joint sprain of his left shoulder. Maneri said there's a good chance he's done for the season. And Nathan Hall's got a heel injury. He's day-to-day. They didn't play him last night. Maneri said by the end of the weekend series at Kentucky, they've got a hard AstroTurf. It's not rubber or sand based like most are. And usually that stuff's cushy. But so we'll just have to see. And that just adds insult to injury in what's already been a really bad season for Gamecock baseball. Let's go on and bring in and welcome back our good friend from the Greenville News, and that is and the USA Today Network, Lulu Kesin. And so, Lulu, I think we have to start with the elephant from last week that ended with a CBS interview that was pulled, shut down for 30 minutes, and that is Bill Belichick, 73 years old, and his 24-year-old granddaughter, or SID, or no, she's his girlfriend, shutting down the CBS interview because she had a temper tantrum. And I don't think Bill Belichick has learned the lesson that as an older man, you can't date a female that's so young and immature that not only are you dating her, but you're having to parent her as well. And this thing just keeps getting better and better and better. And I'm like the meme with the popcorn. I'm just here for it. What are your thoughts? I mean, this is maybe the greatest NFL coach of all time. And now he's basically being run by a 24-year-old former cheerleader.
Yeah, I was 6 months old. No, I was 6 months old when the Patriots won their first Super Bowl, as was Jordan, I believe. I'll be 23. She was probably a year old max because we graduated the same year, but she's already 24. Growing up in Massachusetts, that age, I don't think I ever could. I still can't even think about how Bill Belichick, goes from the coach that's 50 years older than me to the person that I want to date. I'm not her. I don't know that, but yeah, she did go to high school with my boyfriend and with a lot of people that I know. I grew up 2.5 hours, 3 hours away from all of them, but a small world, a weird world. I definitely think it's sad to see what's going on. I think on a lot of levels, I think just don't date someone 50 years younger than you in general. And then obviously going off of how clearly there's a lot of control happening. I think it's sad and scary to see. And I think that my fellow sports journalists that unfortunately, I feel for them that unfortunately have to cover this because this is their coach in the public eye now that he's at UNC. And so it's weird. It's definitely interesting. And I can't lie, I'm also intrigued by it all at the same time.
I mean, I'm just here for it because, I just have, there are some things that you think that is definitely going to happen. And I mean, what's going to happen when he gets grumpy during the season and they're on a 4-game losing streak? And, maybe the starting quarterback and her wind up at a party together and the pictures are on Instagram, or, maybe even worse, more compromising photos are revealed. I mean, this thing is not going to end well. It's just not going to end well. But how many layers are there left? Like the pose of her, the Titanic pose on Bill Belichick's legs. He's holding her on the beach, reeling her in with the like a fish on the Instagram. I just have a feeling this is not going to end well for Bill.
Yeah, like you said, I think there are a lot of layers, and I think that this is gonna last a while. I think he should focus on coaching, and I think she should be a 24-year-old woman. Not, I think she should live her 20s and do everything that, she's not doing right now. I think she.
So you know more about this than me. What happened to his wife? I mean, I thought she was still about 15 or 20 years younger than him. Blonde, a very attractive lady. I saw him sitting at Celtics games on TV. I don't know what happened there, but I mean, is she in it for the money? Is Belichick her sugar daddy? I mean, what is the deal?
I don't know. I believe he and his wife or ex-wife split like 3 or 4 years ago. I remember, I want to say I was in college when it happened, but I really don't know much besides that. I honestly don't know a whole ton about the situation really at all. It's just a small world moment where I happen to know people who knew of her before all of that happened.
Well, all right. Rule number 1 in life applies, men. If you don't know what rule number 1 is, you should. All right. So let's talk about the Gamecocks. And you were at the spring game. And so my first question is, what is up with the wedding proposals at spring games? Why is that even a thing?
I don't know. It must be. I do think that obviously people have, I imagine they have some type of South Carolina connection. I think that in some ways it's like maybe the time of year where they're like South Carolina football fans, but they don't want to propose during the fall. That's my only explanation, because it's a weird trend that I've seen happen twice now.
So, I mean, if you're that guy and you're asking the girl to marry you, and there are 30-something thousand people there, and I've seen it at real games as well, where there's 80,000 people there. I mean, what if she says no? I mean, how certain do you have to be? And as a female, from your perspective, how much pressure does that put on the girlfriend, the potential fiance, to say yes?
Well, I like to believe that everyone, before they get engaged, they talk about getting engaged. And I do know a lot of people that say, like, I really don't want to get engaged in public. So I like to trust that every time I see a very public proposal, that they've talked about it and that the woman has explained that she doesn't mind a crowd or where it is. Obviously, if they don't discuss it and all of a sudden she's getting proposed to in front of 80,000 people, I think that's its own issue. But I just try to hope that everyone who's getting engaged has talked about it, so it doesn't come to a surprise in a way of like, oh my God, why is he doing this? Rather than like, oh my God, I didn't know he was going to do it now. And I would hope that all these very public sports-related proposals are under that same category.
Well, I got to tell you, guys in their 20s are not that bright. They're just not. They're impulsive, and I just don't think they're that bright, but maybe they are. Maybe I'm underestimating this up and coming generation of men. All right, so you were at the spring game after the proposals were over and the players got on the field. What were your thoughts on the crowd, the atmosphere? I mean, it seemed like a good crowd, and I know it's strategic to not have anybody on the east side of the stadium, for the social media and the shots of the crowd to make it look better. But it looked like there were, I think they said, over 36,000 people there. What was your thoughts on the spring game crowd?
Yeah, I think it was actually a really good crowd, a good environment. I think the weather helped a lot. Like the last spring game, my first year, it was really, really hot, whereas it wasn't as bad. Like the weather was sort of perfect where it really dropped when the sun went down, whereas last year it felt like it was like 95 degrees until 1 a.m. I thought it was a good crowd. I thought everyone was super engaged. I think having a quarterback that everybody has like waited months to see again helps. I think a lot of people were just excited to like see Lenore Sellers in a uniform, no matter how long it was. And I think that kind of kicked off a lot of the like good energy for sure.
All right. Well, since you brought up Lenore Sellers, the Lenore Sellers hype and the Heisman campaign, is it real or too soon to tell?
I think it's too soon to tell because I think that anybody can be talked about like that after one good season. And I think that the pressure is really on for him to do, either better or at least just as good as he did in his first year as a starter. So I don't think that anyone is going to be genuinely considered for a Heisman candidate after, one special season like that. Like everybody has to put 2 and 2 together, 3 seasons together, or just continue to, you kind of grow. I think he has some growing to do, but I do think that he's potentially going to be like a legitimate contender by October if the start of the season goes well.
All right, so I agree. So looking at the schedule, to me, in September, there are 2 big games for South Carolina, and I'm not dissing Vanderbilt and Kentucky at home because those are big games. But opening the season on national TV in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium against Virginia Tech in a showcase game on a neutral site, to me, that is obviously it's a season opener, but that is opportunity number 1 for Lenore Sellers to state his case. Then you got South Carolina and Vanderbilt, and then on Saturday, September 20th, at Missouri. I don't think South Carolina has won at Missouri since I was there in 2017 or 18. Anyway, it was the Hayden Hurst game. I think it's 2017 because that's when Muschamp, they won 9 games. It's been a long time since they've won at Missouri. But then October is once again really brutal. You get the open date on October 4th, and then at LSU, Oklahoma at home, and Alabama at home for homecoming. Why they scheduled them for that, I have no idea. And then I'm just going to throw in November 1st at Ole Miss. I mean, to me, those 4 games, which essentially encapsulate October, how South Carolina does in those games, because you have to be a winner, and how Lenore Sellers does in those games, are going to go a long way towards determining the trajectory of the season. Is South Carolina a legitimate college football playoff contender? And is Lenora Sellers, if they are, I think Lenora Sellers is a legitimate Heisman Trophy contender.
Yeah, and I do think that a tricky thing is how a lot of those games ended last year, for better or for worse. South Carolina obviously is going to have, a little extra edge going into Alabama, LSU, but kind of on the flip note, Kentucky, Missouri, those early games are teams that are kind of pissed at how the end of the season played out, at least in Missouri's eyes. So I think that overall, there's not a time. I don't look at the schedule and think there's a time where Lenoris can almost like take a mental break. I think that every area and every pocket has, something different about it in terms of what that game means, either for the opponent, for South Carolina, for Beamer, for Lenoris. So it's going to be an interesting season. I'm excited.
No doubt. Then after Ole Miss, you get your second open date, which I really like having two open dates. And once again, South Carolina will get 2 weeks to prepare for Texas A&M, but that game will be here in Texas at Kyle Field. Then they play Coastal. Like Coastal and South Carolina State are really the only opportunities Lenora Sellers has. You want to get him out of there after the first half of those games, I think. And then, of course, you end the season with Clemson at home with your chance to beat Clemson for 2 years in a row for the first time since Steve Spurrier dropped the 5 bomb on Dabo. And that, with Cade Klubnik coming back, some people have him as a Heisman Trophy candidate. I thought he did have a fabulous junior year. He's a great kid. He grew up right down in Westlake. I officiated his, JV games when he was like a 9th grader. A slow start, but a great junior year. And with their wide receiver core, he's poised to have a huge senior year for Clemson.
For sure. That's also going to be a good one. There's a lot on the line this year, for sure.
I think the thing for South Carolina, my good friend Chris Payne brought this up. We were having a conversation yesterday. Monday, I was at the tire shop because I ran over some broken glass or something from an auto accident and didn't even know it because it happened on Friday, and I didn't leave the house until Sunday afternoon, and my tire shop was closed. By the way, Discount Tire, you pay like a $49 warranty per tire. They replace the tire free of charge for the life of the tire. But I had to get 2 tires replaced. He called me because he had heard that, and he was in the tire shop with his truck. And he just thought, South Carolina could legitimately have the best quarterback in every game and the best defensive player in Dylan Stewart in every game this year. And I don't know if South Carolina has ever been able to say that, even with Connor Shaw as great of a year as he had his senior year. I don't know that he was the best quarterback on the field every week.
Yeah, I think another thing that when you brought up, like, I guess some of the games where Lenore should be able to sit, that's why I was looking at the spring game as sort of like, okay, who's going to play behind Lenoris? Because I think that it was a huge advantage having players like Robbie Ashford, who had, SEC experience. He had college snaps under his belt coming into his career with South Carolina, whereas now it's like, okay, Dante Reno left. He didn't play last year regardless. And then all you have is a true freshman, a walk-on, and a redshirt freshman. And so I'm sort of curious, yes, we can talk all we want about Lenoris Sellers, but he unfortunately had some injuries last year. And so on offense and in the QB room, I think it's going to be critical and absolutely necessary to have a really solid number 2 option who isn't going to, hurt the team if he has to play, a quarter or even a half, like the Kentucky game last year, the LSU game. Not saying Sellers is necessarily injury prone, but you kind of always have to think about that. And I felt a lot more confident in the QB depth, I think, in 2024 than I do right now. That said, Cutter Woods, I think, was the most impressive at the spring game.
All right, so I think we need to have a conversation about Luke Doty, because I think he has firmly inserted himself in that role, and he'll be like a 6th-year player. He was a starter. First, he was going to be the starting quarterback Beamer's first year, and then Beamer's first-year offensive coordinator lets a 6'6", 280-pound defensive lineman get so close to him he steps on his foot and breaks his foot before the first scrimmage, which I thought was a sign of things to come for Marcus Satterfield, or Marcus the Moron, as I call him. And so he got hurt and missed time. And then Zeb Nolan gets hurt against Georgia, and Luke Doty comes in. South Carolina loses that game because Georgia was a national championship contender. But Luke Doty balled out and played winning football until he re-broke his foot in the Vanderbilt game after he'd already thrown 2 touchdown passes. Now, granted, it's been a while since he's played, but he is a veteran guy. He is a great athlete who knows all the wide receiver spots, is a willing special teams player. He's tough, but obviously he has the most experience. I still feel good based off everything I've heard and on his pedigree on, I'm not calling him Air, I'm calling him by his given name, Prentice Nolan. And Cutter Woods was impressive, but I remember Taki Muhammad, when Lou Holtz was there, catching like 16 passes for 280 yards in a spring game, and he couldn't catch a cold during the season. They moved him back to defensive back like 3 or 4 weeks into the season. But I do think Luke Doty has inserted himself in that, and that is a different dynamic and somebody that is experienced and has proven it. And I think somebody Shane Beamer believes in for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I do tend to forget about Luke in the sense that, like, we didn't really get to see much of spring practice this year, so it was kind of hard to know his genuine involvement in quarterback stuff. And then obviously he played a lot of the spring game and played well, in my opinion. I think it's just sort of, I'm just waiting to see. I don't think that all of a sudden he's going to show up for, summer camp and not want to be a quarterback anymore, or Shane's going to all of a sudden, change something. But at the same time, that's when we kind of have a better idea of what things look like. And I am kind of curious to see the difference in, the end of spring to the start of summer with him.
No doubt. So let's start with offense and give me maybe 2 or 3 or 4 players that really stood out from their physical attributes and their athleticism.
I like the new tight end, Jordan Dingle. I was impressed with him, the Kentucky transfer. I think he'll be good. Both of the true, honestly, a lot of the true freshman wide receivers, like Malik Clark, Brian Rowe, he's a true freshman, right? Or is he a transfer? Yeah. They were good. It was funny hearing Lenoris kind of make fun of how his brother Jaden played. and stuff. I personally, I know this is special teams, but I was impressed with Mason Love in terms of kicking and punting. I think he'll be probably Kai Kroger's replacement. I'm trying to think of it. The spring game feels like 9 weeks ago, even though it was like 12 days ago. I'm trying to think of who else I was impressed with. Obviously, like I do think that Dre Jacobs will have a bigger role again this year. I thought he was really good in the spring game. It's tricky. Mazio didn't play. I think Mazio, obviously he's a little undersized, but I think Mazio is a great player. And so it was kind of hard to gauge maybe who will dominate the wide receiver room, but I definitely felt a lot better about the wide receiver options this spring game than I felt last spring game.
Okay. All right. How about the running backs? Because obviously, like, maybe we just for a second discuss the NFL draft. I'm continually amazed at how many morons run draft rooms and get paid millions of dollars to do it in the NFL draft. So I'll say this. No offense to Robbie Oots or Jake Browning-Stool, but how do they get drafted and Joshua Simon doesn't get drafted? And how do 17 or 18 running backs get drafted and Rocket Sanders doesn't get drafted? I mean, that guy was a dude. Look at the Missouri game. Look at the Vanderbilt game. I mean, Texas A&M, LSU. And I think he went to the perfect team with the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, who loves big physical running backs. I mean, they're not replacing that guy. But before we go to defense, what were your thoughts on the running backs? I know there were some offensive linemen that were out. It's really hard to tell about offensive lines in a spring game because they're split up and there's walk-ons mixed with each group. But did anybody flash or impress you out of the running back room?
Well, I wouldn't say that necessarily. It's tricky to say impressed because I do expect Oscar Adaway to get a lot of the running back kind of attention this year. I think he performed well in the spring or in the Citrus Bowl, despite him being pretty injured. I'm sort of curious to see how he approaches this. Rocket isn't here anymore. It's sort of, my time to shine, but I also have to sort of prove it. It's not going to be handed to me. So I think he has the right attitude about things in general. He seems like a very a locker room guy, a leader. I think I love just hearing how Rocket never really talked. That's some of my favorite thing is that he was just this completely dominant player who made such a positive impact on the field and off the field as well. Everyone loved him, but it was also kind of funny to think about how he never really talked in that sense. He was a pretty quiet guy. How do you say the new guys, the transfers, Rasul? Is that
on?
Yeah. He was good. Spring game's so hard because you're kind of trying to figure out okay, should I make a big deal out of what someone did, or should I expect that the defense was sort of all true freshmen and lazy out there? So the dynamics are sort of tricky, but I do think that the running back room will definitely be at a loss without Rocket. I'm not saying they're going to be worse, but I think offensively, that's probably the biggest shoe to fill was just what Rocket did each game.
I mean, I have to say that shuffle pass to essentially finish off Missouri with 15 seconds left. I mean, the press box was shaking. Even the TV announcer said it. And people inside that I've known that have been going to games since the late 70s, early 80s that grew up like me going to games at Williams-Brice Stadium said that's the loudest they've ever heard that stadium. And he I mean, we saw it when he was healthy in 2022. What a special player. I mean, you just can't replace that, but maybe by committee with all the different skill sets you have. And the fact that, Michael Smith will come back at tight end, Jordan Dingle, Brady Hunt, Mo Brown can be a fullback, H-back type. Maybe that'll help in the run game. But I think wide receiver and tight end, South Carolina should have a lot of weapons for Lenore Sellers, who, by the way, if you ask Clemson, he's pretty good. I mean, on that last touchdown run, there were like 4 or 5 guys. It's like, no, I'm not taking on that speeding locomotive headed towards the goal line.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to see how this mix of younger players and transfers sort of plays out. But I feel like after last year, and I won't lie, like obviously I did not expect Kyle Kennard and Demetrius Knight to make the impact that they did. So it's sort of like going off of how I think of transfer people from now on. I'm kind of like, I have lower expectations for anyone, good or bad, because I'm like, I saw what somebody did in 1 year that I did not expect. And then I also saw people that I sort of thought were going to be great and that they didn't meet those expectations. Like I guess that's the annoying yet the fun part of the portal nowadays, is that you really don't know what you're fully getting.
That's right. It's kind of like a box of chocolates.
Exactly. You love that one.
So let's quickly talk about defense. Look, offense, it's like an orchestra being conducted. Everybody has to work in unison for it to work. On defense, one guy can wreck a play. Who were the guys that stood out to you? Maybe just in the front 6, because South Carolina, by the way, the call Demetrius Knight got that South Carolina put out on social media. I mean, that guy, he became my guy early in the season. He just was the heart and soul of that team. I kind of had somebody telling me the way he was in the locker room, almost like he was an extension of Derek Moore as the minister of the team and just a natural leader. And, he's different than 99% of other college kids that are going in the draft. They're not married and have 2 kids, young kids like he's got. And for him to get that call from Cincinnati in the 2nd round, that was just my favorite moment of the draft.
Yeah, I wrote a story about Demetrius really early on in the season, and I kind of try to always brag about that I'm like, I saw something in him really early on. But, I mean, when you ask Shane Beamer about a player and his first, he looks you dead in the eyes and says, I love Demetrius Knight. Like it's pretty clear on his impact. And so I'm a Bengals fan, so I'm really glad that he was drafted by the Bengals. I hope that, obviously he makes it through training camp and everything goes well for he and his family. But like, I cry every dang time I watch that. But to answer your question, I think that I was looking a lot of like, I expect kind of Brian Thomas Jr. to replace Kyle Kennard in some ways in terms of, that other edge with Dylan Stewart. I think that they played well in the Citrus Bowl together. There's obviously a lot to replace. You have to replace a lot of incredible defensive tackles. You also have to replace, Debo Williams, Demetrius Knight, Nikki Manwari. I think that Clayton White still has a really solid group with Judge and Jalen and DQ Smith. I think that he didn't necessarily lose everybody. but at the same time, there are a lot of areas to replace. And I had a hard time kind of making any judgments in the spring game just because it's the spring game. I understand like there's players, you don't want to injure your teammates. There's not that they're necessarily looking to injure opponents, but it's obviously just a different dynamic and a different level of intensity. So to be completely honest, no one necessarily like stood out more than the other to me, just because I have a hard time kind of gauging how much credit to give in a spring game like that.
So how about just from an athletic perspective, or guys that were physically really impressive on defense?
That's a good question. I would say I have to remember. I mean, I thought that I did think Brian Thomas Jr. was impressive. I thought Desmond, the other edge who came in, he was good. I think that it depends sort of – well, I did think that Judge and Jalen and DQ, as sort of always, were good. I thought well, it's kind of sad Ronnie Porter transferred, but he, I thought, was impressive. Moncal Goodwine wasn't bad. I think that Mo Brown is kind of always going to be like pretty good on special teams in terms of the way that he's sort of able to hunt down the ball. So I think that there's talent there. I'm just kind of curious to see, okay, how do they develop over the summer and into the fall?
All right, so let's switch gears just for a few minutes here. Women's basketball. A lot's kind of happened since our last conversation. Today at 4 p.m., I guess you'll be there covering Dawn Staley's statue unveiling. She's been a whole lot more than just a national championship winning basketball coach. She has built an organic following in the community with a completely different group of people that attend any other Gamecock sporting event. I think 10 years in a row now, South Carolina's led the nation in attendance, and she did it by going out in the community with her team and just boots on the ground in every part of Columbia. And she speaks her mind, and she says what she means, and she means what she says. And it's her time. And her platform, it's kind of like the latest iteration of A Star Is Born. Bradley Cooper tells Lady Gaga, when you've got that stage and people are listening, you better be impactful, because at some point they're not going to listen. And now is her time. And she is, I think, way more than just a basketball coach. And I think she stands for a lot of things. Your thoughts?
1,000%. I couldn't agree more. I think that this statue represents so much more than what she's done as a coach. And I think that it's remarkable to think about, 20 years ago, she didn't really know this city. Columbia didn't really know her. And the last 17 years, what she's done for the community and for people, and how she's made people feel so understood and seen and heard. And I think that, her effort has always been there to go beyond just a dominant coach. And I just think it's really cool. I saw, this is super random, but I saw like a video of Heart singing Stairway to Heaven in front of Led Zeppelin. And some of the comments were like, this is why we need to do more tributes to people while they're still alive, so they can understand and like feel the impact. And granted, some people refuse to kind of sit there and feel that praise. But I think with somebody like Dawn, and I feel similarly about the Asia Wilson statue, like it's really cool that it wasn't done through tragedy. I think a lot of times, like, oh no, somebody passed away, we need to honor them with the statue, whereas this is a chance for Dawn to go to practice every day and be reminded of what she's continuing to do. And I think that's very cool.
No doubt. All right, so Winston Gandy, he left to take the head coaching job at Grand Canyon. For a while, it looked like Lisa Leslie may be in line for that coaching job. I think she kind of maybe thought she wanted to do it, but after she really thought about it, decided not to. But South Carolina adds a current Southern Cal assistant in Wendell Farrow, who spent time at UCLA with Corey Close, went to Vanderbilt with Melanie Balcom in 2016, who, by the way, that was her last year at Vanderbilt, and she was a special assistant at South Carolina during the first national championship season. So there's a connection there. And then he went to Cal with Lindsay Gottlieb, and 3 years ago, he followed her there to Southern Cal. And so the first thing that stands out to me is the West Coast pedigree, because that has kind of been the final unconquered frontier for Dawn Staley, is getting a blue chip high school player from the West Coast.
Yeah, and I mean, from what I've heard and what I've seen, I think he's great. I think he's a great fit. I think it's great that there's an assistant coach who knows how to coach a scorer like Juju, obviously with Latson coming in, people who are, dominant in terms of scoring. I think it's good to have a coach who really understands that. So I'm hyped. I think it was a really good hire, and I think it's going to be a very good experience for players and for Dawn and the coaching staff.
All right, so something that I think we all knew was going to happen finally happened, and that was Medina Okot, the 6'6" center from Kenya. She officially signed with South Carolina. She made her official visit. I think after getting the transcripts from the university in Kenya where she was, but from what I'm hearing, we don't even know how many years that's going to count in her eligibility, even though Mississippi State listed her as a junior. What do you think about the fit of Medina Okot? Basically 11 points and 10 rebounds a game and about 22 minutes per game sharing time with others at Mississippi State.
Well, I think that it's a huge get for South Carolina, and I think that what she brings is a true center that Dawn can kind of use her, her versatility around. I think, having players like Isla and then McKeer and Tessa, just players that are sort of flexible in terms of playing a more guard forward position. And then you have Dauda, who can, create size on the 3-point line and be able to pose a threat there, but also dump insert passes. Like I think that especially what she's going to bring will just enhance South Carolina's offense, obviously with the size and the position. But I think that it's the right year for her to have someone like this, because Dawn has really versatile players around her, which is going to really pay off, in my opinion. Not saying that, I feel like what she has in Tessa and even Raven can rebound and get in the paint. And with her true freshman coming in, they just have a little bit more flexibility in terms of natural position than maybe Pau and Bree and even Lay had last year, where they were just a little bit more, I don't want to say one-dimensional because they were incredible players, but they just position-wise, it wasn't like Bree was gonna, back down the lane and make a layup the same way that I see McDowell or McKeer or Tessa doing.
I agree. I think she also helps offensive and defensive rebounding, like you said. That was an issue at times for South Carolina in those big games where you knew they were going to miss the presence of Ashlyn Watkins, who, had like 22 rebounds in a Final Four game as a sophomore. They just did not have anybody like that. Ashlyn will be back. I know Dawn is optimistic, maybe more optimistic on the time frame on that, but nothing will surprise me because of the grit and the will and the strength of Ashlyn Watkins. And so you add a 6'6" shot blocker, offensive rebounder. South Carolina has had that with, from Asia Wilson and Elena Coates to Aaliyah Boston and then Camila Cardoso. They cleaned up a lot of missed shots. So I really like that, and I think we're on the same page. I'm super high on these two wing players South Carolina's bringing in. ESPN adjusted their rankings and put McDowell at 15. I still think that may be too low. I really think she has an incredibly high floor and a high ceiling. I could see her, depending on what happens with Gianna Nipkins, I think she could be a rotational player. And we're still in a holding pattern on that. I know one outlet put that Oklahoma and UCLA are the leaders on that. I don't know if I buy that. What's your thoughts on that from what you're hearing?
My thoughts on Oklahoma in general, or?
Well, just on John and Oklahoma and UCLA versus South Carolina.
Gotcha. I would see, if I'm being honest, I feel like I see her at UCLA the most just in terms of fit and what they lost, especially losing their three-point shooter Jones. I think that in terms of maybe, I don't know, like I think she would fit in great at South Carolina, but it's a tough ask to go to a graduate student and be like, hey, you're probably not going to start. So I think that's sort of a tricky dynamic that I don't necessarily blame anyone at this point and at that point in her career for avoiding. But I think that it would be incredibly beneficial if South Carolina got her. But if I had to be real, I see her going to UCLA more than anything.
Okay, well, we will see on that. And lastly, it was official. Milaysia Fulwiley is going to LSU. I'm here for that because the dynamic of her and Flojae Johnson, who that was the initial scuffle in the SEC championship game 2 years ago. How that's going to go, the fact that, unfortunately for her, it got out in the media. Somebody from Skim Milky's Discord screenshotted what he was hearing, which kind of backs up what I was hearing, was that essentially Fulwiley's mom was driving the decision. She, after the initial meeting with the demands and saying, well, I'm going in the transfer portal, wanted to stay with the team, and the juice was worth the squeeze. And so she is now going. I mean, we all know Kim Mulkey has that sideline antics and the weird costumes. But what's it going to be like when Milaysia is just going out there and maybe she has some great plays, but then she launches 4 or 5 in a row, 28 footers, and has 3 or 4 consecutive turnovers, I don't even know if she'll make it to that point without being yanked.
Yeah. I'm just, like you said, popcorn. I'm going to see how it happens, because I think that it could go many different ways, but I definitely don't see it working out perfectly. I think that there'll be, for better or for worse, I think there'll be trouble along the way. And heck, I'll say that about half these transfer portal programs. That's not necessarily like I'm expecting Lay to fail. It's a gamble. You leave a school because you want to be the star, and I respect that entirely. And it's, I think, an interesting decision to go to a school with a well-established star. And so I think they're either going to elevate each other, or I just think that it won't be what Lay was looking for out of the portal. And I think we'll just have to wait and see. But hey, South Carolina's at LSU next year, so.
Well, I mean, they fired the agent, which I think may have been Jade Lee English, who works for Clutch Sports, because she couldn't get what they thought they deserved. I don't really know what they thought deserved. I mean, I'm not going to throw out numbers, but I mean, well, maybe I will. Allegedly, $500,000. I mean, after the way she played down the stretch, I don't know anybody. And sometimes it's addition through subtraction, and Tanaya Latson is a walking bucket and a really dynamic scorer who's not going to have to score 30 points or 40 points for her team to win, which I think will make her even more dangerous at South Carolina.
Yeah. Heck, I'm ready for basketball season. I can't wait.
Well, we got to get through football, which a lot of people think very highly of South Carolina, and we all think very highly of you. And always enjoy having you on. Thanks for doing double duty today and talking football and women's basketball. Are you going on vacation anytime soon? I mean, it's got to be about that time, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really tired. I'm going home not this weekend, but next weekend for like 2 days, which isn't vacation, because I'll still work while I'm home. But I'm hoping to take a lot of time off in July. I'll be on, like, off and on. There's media days. There's, South Carolina, like, meet the players for basketball and stuff. But I'm hoping to really, as things quiet down in June and July, to sleep and take some time off for sure.
All right, well, rest and be well. And thanks again. And we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Sure thing. You too. Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Take care. Yep. All right, that was Lulu Kesin. So good news for Lamont Paris, as Cam Scott is coming back to South Carolina. That was kind of interesting. So good news for Lamont Paris. Scott. That means they're up to 2 returning players now with Jordan Butler. If Miles Studi gets his waiver, he'll be back. Do we count Michi as a returning player? I don't know, but and then Lamont Paris adds class of 2025 teammate of Eli Ellis and Hayden Asimian, Abu Yarma, 6'7", 185 from Roanoke and Moravian Prep, who helped lead Moravian to the Championship, he averaged 14 points and 8 rebounds a game. Craig, I think Michi is probably it at point guard. Craig, I agree with you. I think Desu, from what I've heard, made a big step. Maybe they're going to look to add a point guard now. Currently, 13 scholarships are taken with 2 returning players, 5 freshmen, 6 transfers, and then you've got Studi. Now, what happens if, things don't go great for CMB at the NBA draft combine? Do you go ahead and add the point guard? I mean, I think you do. I think he's 90% out the door. And then at that point, you just have to make a decision about Miles Studi. I don't know if CMB were to come back, but I do think they need to add a guard. We'll see what happens there. Big news yesterday in the transfer portal for Gamecock Football is they add Georgia Southern defensive tackle Troy Pikes, 6'3", 290. Look, this is a big, when you look at the visits, Ohio, Georgia, he's an Atlanta kid, Georgia Tech, and South Carolina gets it done. Hats off to Traden Robertson, Sterling Lucas, and of course, Clayton White and Shane Beamer. They get that done. What I told him is my internet out here. He's kind of like a Tonka Hill, possesses some of the same traits as TJ Sanders, who, by the way, very early in the second round. Buffalo, initially, they had a first-round grade on him. They get him early in the second round. But if he can come in and be the third or fourth guy, I think South Carolina's coaches are very high on him and expect him to be a rotational player this year, but probably a future starter in that position. And that's no shade on anybody else. I'm super high on the 2 true freshmen. Christian Ingram, man, when you beat Southern Cal and Michigan and Georgia on the guy, and Caleb Williams, who you beat Georgia on, they offered him about a month after he committed to, he stayed loyal. Those guys are 6'5", 6'6", 290 coming in. They're going to be really good. Gabriel Brownlow Dindy, Monkel Goodwine, and Nick Barrett. I think we can get something from Troy Pikes, and then Xavier Hardy continues to improve. That gives you 4 strong guys right there. And then you got Devontae Miles. And who knows, maybe South Carolina signs another defensive tackle. Currently, South Carolina has Incarnate Word, offensive lineman Nolan Hay, 6'4", 310, out of Katy, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston. He's on campus. His official visit will wrap on Thursday as South Carolina and Oklahoma State. I think the Gamecocks feel very good about adding him. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife. He's played guard, center, and tackle. And I think he is the guy South Carolina wants, so we'll see how that goes. I still think the Gamecocks need a place kicker. I think it's asking a lot of a true freshman to do it all, or a redshirt freshman, rather. But we'll see. Max Kelly will enroll at the end of May. And so he's got all summer. Maybe he's the kickoff guy. And, you know, you use Mason Love to kick field goals and punts. We'll see how that goes. But I sure wish they would at least add a better kicker and give him the opportunity to win that job so Mason Love could just focus on being a punter. But I'm not getting paid $6 million to make that decision. So that's it for the show today. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, like the show. Do the same on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And we'll be back next week. And so special thanks to Lulu Kesin, who absolutely knocked it out of the park. And thanks to all of you. I'm Keith Allsep. This has been the Garnet and Black Town Hall Gamecock Pod Live for April 30th, episode number 1700. And I'm kind of like Ron Burgundy. I'll just read whatever's in front of me. So God bless, go Gamecocks, and everybody have a great rest of the week. I'm out of here.